Berlin is home to an iconic complex began by Hitler and completed by the Americans that quite likely changed the course of history for Germany following World War II. We're at Tempelhof Airport, once the lifeline to Berlin. The doors to this historic place have now been locked forever, but we're going to take you for a special look inside. With its limestone facades and soaring ceilings, Tempelhof continued the Third Reich vision of building on a grand scale. But the imposing structure is not the reason for Tempelhof's place in the history books. It was the role its runway played in saving lives and protecting West Berlin from Soviet dominance. After World War II, expansionist Germany was significantly reduced and 4 occupation zones were established, controlled by the Soviets, British, American, and French. Berlin, in the heart of the Soviet zone, was also split amongst the conquering forces. A divided city within a divided country. In 1947, American and British zones became one to better fight the march of communism, with the French joining them in 1948. The Soviets took this as a serious threat and reacted by cutting off all land and water routes to Berlin, a thinly veiled plan to force the Allies to abandon the city. The blockade left West Berlin an isolated island with little food or supplies. The Allies countered with a Berlin Airlift, using Tempelhof Airport as its main base for the greatest airlift in the history of mankind. More than 2.5 million tons of food, coal, and other supplies were delivered by crews from the US, UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa, with planes arriving every 3 minutes, day and night. The Berlin Airlift kept more than 2 million West Berlin citizens from starving, and equally important, free.
If they would not have been in Berlin, this would not be West Germany anymore. There would be no reunification, and we would be the Soviet Union, part of it, at least a satellite.
It was also very important what it did in the minds of the people. You know, before the airlift, even the Western Allied forces, they were here as conquerors and occupants. After the airlift, they were here as helpers and friends.
One who left an immense impression was Lieutenant Gail Halverson, who delighted children near Tempelhof by dropping chocolates attached to handkerchief parachutes. As pilots joined him, the fleet soon became known as the Raisin Bombers, drawing cheering crowds on every landing.
All these kids were there, piling on top of each other. I tried to get one, I never got one.
The Soviet blockade ended after 11 months, by which time the Allies and West Berliners had developed a fundamental trust, and freedom was firmly entrenched.
They kept Berlin free, and we should not forget that. And we will not forget that.
Tempelhof remained one of Berlin's main airports for over half a century after the airlift, but closed its doors in 2008. Its historic terminal and legacy remain, and it's an unusual and interesting visit to make in Berlin. Viking river cruises, sharing privileged access to historic Europe.